Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, Eternally Obsessed, the podcast where I talk about Marvel, Star Wars, anything else in the media I'm eternally obsessed with, joined with a fellow content creator and a friend each week. In this week's episode, which is going to be a really big episode, we are talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. This is going to be a non-spoiler review, and then later we will dig into the spoiler stuff, which will be a majority of this episode. So even if you haven't seen the movie, you can stick around for the first 15 minutes just to hear our non-spoiler thoughts, and then click off, come back, and hear our spoiler discussion later. And joining me to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, I have one of the biggest Spider-Man nerds I have ever met, ZOE. ZOE, thank you so much for joining this podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Would you like to introduce yourself to
Yes, well, thank you for having me. When I saw you were doing an episode on No Way Home, I'm like, I know I'm going to have thoughts on this movie because Spider-Man has been my life. Like since I was a tiny child, I would make my family reenact scenes with me. Very annoying like that. Yes, ZOE Cannoli / Cool Cannoli. That's me. I mainly just post a lot of Marvel stuff, sometimes Star Wars stuff too, but very big into Marvel / MCU. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being on here. Guys, you should follow ZOE. Like, she makes such funny Marvel TikToks. I've seen her on my For You page, and then she's just like really great. And so I decided to follow her, and now we're here. No Way Home. But yeah, you should go check her out. She's definitely a really fun person to talk to, super sweet. So I will leave all of her links in the description, but definitely go check her out. So, but let's just like pretty much web right into it.
Oh, good one.
I like try to do puns and like sometimes it works, but I don't know if this is a bad one. I'm sorry. But yeah, let's just dive right in. So we're gonna start off, like I said, this is a non-spoiler review. This will sort of just be like our first thoughts, non-spoiler review, any of that. I know ZOE here has seen the movie 3 times already, and I've only seen it once. And as of recording, it's not even been 24 hours since I've seen the movie, so I have a lot of processing left to do, but I feel like we'll get through it as we, get through the episode. But yeah, ZOE, would you like to go first and give us your non-spoiler review?
Yeah, so I saw the movie for the first time Wednesday, then at the Soups fan event, and then I saw it Thursday and Friday, and just every time I'm like, there's no way this movie is real. It's so amazing. If you're a Spider-Man fan, even if you're not, you are going to love this movie. I would say it is a love letter to Peter Parker. I can't go into like too much detail, but I remember leaving the theater and I was just like, oh my goodness, did I really like, this is incredible. For me, it blew my mind, definitely lived up to the hype. And it was just so amazing. Like I never even ate my popcorn I bought, and I'm someone who loves popcorn. I was so into the movie. Like I had a large popcorn, didn't even like get the top layer off. I was just so into it. It's so good, and it stays good every single time I've watched it. I've had the same amount of hype, same amount of emotions. It's just incredible.
Yeah, no, I think honestly what you what you said, a lot of people have voiced, and I can also voice as well. So as mentioned before, Zoe's been a long time Spider-Man fan, and personally for me, I did not grow up watching the Tobey or the Andrew or even the Tom movies. I watched all the movies I watched all the live action movies for the first time this year, purely to prep for Spider-Man No Way Home, because I saw that they were going to be bringing all of these different villains in. But so I was like, well, like if I want to understand more about the world of Spider-Man, I got to watch the movie. So I watched the live action movie. So I felt pretty prep going into Spider-Man No Way Home. And let me tell you, like ZOE said, whether if you're a Spider-Man fan, you're a Marvel fan, this movie will blow your mind. And especially to the Marvel fan part, I went with my sister. My sister has never seen a Spider-Man movie in her life before No Way Home, but she came out of this movie saying, I cried at least 5 different times, and this was a top 5 Marvel movie for her.
Yes.
So this attests to just how great this movie is. It is a love letter to Spider-Man fans. It is every Spider-Man fan's dream, this movie. Like, that's what it is. And it was just like the characters for me were the heart and soul of this movie. And the acting performances put up by every single person in that movie was just across the board. Like, it was just beautiful to watch. And I just think, like if you love Spider-Man, like this is a must see film. This film deserves the hype, it deserves the love, it deserves every single record it's breaking. Like it, I don't know how they can honestly top this film, because I know it's been confirmed
Yeah,
that they are doing like another college trilogy. I just don't know like how they can top this at all. I it was a spectacle. That's what I'm going to end it off as.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we kind of given our non-spoiler thoughts. So we can get into the spoiler part. If you've not seen the movie, this is your cue to kick off, to leave the podcast,
To
come
swing
back.
out.
Yeah, swing out, like she said. Swing out. Exactly. So yeah, this is your chance to leave. And we are going to get into the spoiler discussion in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so starting off with a spoiler discussion, we do have a little bit of an outline. I think, like Zoe and I said, the characters were, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your
It's
name.
okay. A lot of people call me Zoe anyways.
No, I will stick to Zoe. A lot of people, like Zoe and I said, the characters were the heart of this movie. So why don't we just start off with discussing the characters, starting off with Tom Holland, specifically his Peter Parker,
Oh my
his
goodness.
Spider-Man. I think this is his Spider-Man logo. I don't know,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
let's start off with just Peter Parker, Spider-Man, specifically Tom Holland. Where I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, okay. So I've never been the biggest fan of Tom Holland's. I've never had like a problem with him, but I'm just like, I don't know, this isn't the Spider-Man I've read in comics or like seen in the other movies. But this movie, he truly became his own like Spider-Man. He is no longer, as people would call him, Iron Boy Jr. Like oh my goodness, he was incredible. The anger he was able to channel when he was like, oh my goodness, just everything. I was like, damn it, is Tom Holland my favorite Spider-Man now? He was incredible. I didn't think he would be able to give us such like moving performance, but every single thing, I was like, wow, just in shock with his talent. And it broke me. He totally broke me, and is definitely one of the reasons I cried in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I gotta voice everything you said. I think I have not read the Spider-Man comics, but from what I've been able to gather of what people think Spider-Man should be, from watching the Spider-Man movies, like the most comic accurate up until No Way Home that I tried to figure out was probably like Tobey Maguire's. And for me, like Andrew Garfield just personally was my favorite Spider-Man, but I just always thought Tobey Maguire was like the best written Spider-Man that we had seen, or so far. And then No Way Home comes around, and again, like I was very similar to you. I didn't really have a problem with like Tom Holland. I didn't even think of him as Iron Boy Jr., to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was just like when you look at his story that we saw with Homecoming and Far From Home, and then you compare it to what we saw with like the Tobey Maguire movies and how he was structured as Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man just seemed kind of far away from that. And so I just didn't really like, definitely didn't hate his movies. Definitely didn't love them either. They were both very mid for me. But then, No Way Home comes around, and it's like, it was so good. And his acting performance was so good. And I think this is one of the best live action representations of Spider-Man we have ever seen.
Definitely.
And it was in No Way Home. It was with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Like every single decision that his character made, I was like, this is the most Spider-Man thing. This is the most Peter Parker thing that can get. Like when he brought in those 4 villains into Happy's apartment, like barely knowing about their backstory, barely knowing about what they can do, and not even knowing like what happens in their own individual universes, but he just brought them in because he wanted to see if he could help them in any ways just off of what he'd gathered. I was like, this is the most Peter Parker thing to do. It's like the most chaotic but most selfless thing like that Spider-Man can do. And I was just like, yeah, like this is a love letter to Spider-Man fans.
It
and
really
Tom Holland's
is.
Spider-Man like really embodied that in this movie. So yeah.
So good.
So good. I know. So for you personally, how do you think that Tom Holland's Spider-Man like embodies what Spider-Man stands for in this movie?
I mean, especially, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, even though I know we're in the spoiler part, especially at the end when he is on his own, he's making his costume and living in an apartment. It's like, this is taking me back to what I'm used to seeing, like with Tobey. But like you were saying, the way he's so selfless, like he's just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And it's incredible seeing him just helping these people who are literally villains and like murderers in their own universes. And he comes in and he's like, you know what? No, instead of punishing them, we're going to like rehabilitate them and try and save them. And seeing that is just like, that's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man I know. And seeing him at the end on his own really is making it more like it, because, you know, he didn't have the help of anyone else. He's doing this on his own in an amazing, beautiful suit, might I add. That is now my new favorite Spider-Man suit of like the live action ones. It was always Andrew before, and I always hated Tom's, but then I saw that and I'm like, this is gorgeous. And I'm really curious to see, like, I feel like they're going to get him more comic accurate or similar to like Tobey's as we move on into the college trilogy, with him having to figure this all out on his own. And just, yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, this is the movie that made Tom Holland that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, even
Yes.
though it was even though it was like the least concentrated away from the neighborhood as it could be. It was the one that was like, he was that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man because of how selfless he was.
It really showed his heart, like how good of a person he is.
Right. And like this time, everything that he did, it wasn't connected to Tony Stark, and every decision he made, like he made the decision based off of like what person closest to him, Aunt May, said, rather than, you know, like what necessarily Tony Stark would have done. I don't know, especially I feel like in the Homecoming trilogy, like I feel like the other part where we really did see the Tom Holland's heart was also in the Homecoming trilogy with Vulture, but we kind of lost that a little bit in
Far From Home. Yeah.
And then it really like swung back and just completely shown like in No Way Home. Like we just really saw.
Yeah. I mean, almost everything he did in No Way Home was his own. Like you were saying, it's not related to Tony Stark. His villains in all his other movies are after him basically because of Tony Stark and his suits. Tony Stark, everything's his own. And like at the end, when he made the decision to like, I'm going to make sure everyone like forgets who I am. I'm sorry, I don't think Tony Stark would ever do that. Tony Stark likes the attention, but Tom's Peter is like, I'm going to do what's best for the people. Like, even if it means no one knows who I am, even if it means I lose everything, I'm on my own, I will do this. Like, yeah.
I think you can really see the influence of Tony Stark at the beginning of the movie in particular, because obviously like all the events that like accumulated in the movie wouldn't have happened if Tom Holland's Peter Parker just said like, yeah, everyone can forget about me in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Like none of the events movies would have occurred, but I think you can kind of see that impact of Tony Stark and like Tom trying to have people close to him, but also still being sort of remembered. At least like that's the way kind of I interpreted it, because he was like, oh no, like this exception, this exception, this exception. And then towards the end, it was like, that is like Spider-Man, like one of the most selfless heroes, because he was like, no, like everyone should forget. And I think that decision was like the culmination of all the events that happened and like meeting the people that he did and just the interactions he had. So I think it was actually really beautifully shown in just the development and the dynamics of Spider-Man.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So after Tom Holland's like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, how about we maybe talk about how the other two Spider-Man that showed up, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and how that may have played into Tom Holland becoming the Spider-Man and the decision that he saw at the end. Because I think for myself, the dynamic between the three of them was one of the most perfect things I've seen in Marvel. Like, I just want to say the way that Tobey and Andrew were integrated into this movie, they had the perfect amount of screen time. They had the perfect fight scenes. They had the perfect lines. They had the perfect dynamics, perfect references and callbacks. Everything was so seamlessly integrated. I literally had no issue with the way they were used at all. And I kind of want to talk about how the interactions that they had with Tom Holland may have influenced his decision, because I feel like it was definitely like a huge driving force in the change of his character. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, to go back what you were saying about how they had the perfect amount of screen time and everything, they really did, because Marvel totally could have made this a movie where it is all three of them the stars, but they made sure we are going to keep Tom Holland like front and center. But Yeah, I think the conversation the three of them had on the roof of, I think it was, yeah, on their school, Midtown, it really started to show how other people like can be affected when Tom's like, you guys don't understand what I'm going through. Like, it's my fault she died. First of all, Andrew's face in that scene broke me. Um, but they're like, no. And then when Tom's saying, like, even when she was dying, she said, with great power. And Toby finishes it saying, comes great responsibility, which amazing moment. It shows Tom, like, she didn't die for nothing and helps push him. Like, if they didn't show up in the movie, he would have just sent everyone home. Like, that's one thing that he was ready to be selfish, but they kind of brought him back to the Spider-Man roots, being like, no, we are going to like help cure these people. And I'm going to give Toby credit for most of this, but Toby was the one being like, hey, even though Green Goblin straight up murdered your aunt, we have to help him because like that's what we do. And he stops him from straight up killing him, which we are definitely going to need to talk about that scene.
Oh yeah, when we get to the villains,
yes,
we're going to.
Yes, but they like reminded him that Spider-Man is someone who is selfless, or even if maybe he didn't know that fully before, but they showed him like Toby and Andrew said, you know, it's just what we do. Like, we're there to help people when they're in need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of it might be their regrets from not being able to help the villains that they were able to. Like the fact that Doc Ock and obviously the Tobey Maguire trilogy, he had to die sacrificing himself so that the arms would stop working, right?
Yeah.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that was sort of the premise.
Yeah, like
he
died with the arms.
And then like Green Goblin was obviously impaled and like
yeah. Sorry, it's just such a funny
Norman
scene.
wasn't able to be cured, but I think maybe from their side it was also a little bit, I wouldn't say regret, but the fact that they had the ability to, you know, change these villains and basically help cure them, I think was really a motivator for also them to push like Tom Holland's Peter Parker in order to make that decision of not to hurt them and to give these people a second chance.
Yeah.
And I just think like the way that the references were done really also just influenced Tom Holland's Spider-Man when he learned about the other people's stories. Like when Tom Holland said, "You don't know what I'm going through," it's like they do know what you're going through.
Yeah.
Technically, they are you, just a different version. Like, you know, like Tobey Maguire lost. He literally said how he lost his best friend, and he talked about losing Uncle Ben, and then obviously Andrew Garfield talked about losing Gwen Stacy.
Man lost everything in his movies, like everyone he loved,
everything
except for Aunt May.
Yeah, and it's like they do know, and so because they do know what you're going through, they can help you find the best way. And I think because they were there, we got the story that like because they were there, they were able to help Tom Holland, and we were able to get the story that we get because they were integrated into it. And yeah, like that's kind of what my thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Tom Holland's Peter Parker, Spider-Man stole the show, but I kind of want to talk about Doctor Strange for a moment. What are your thoughts about Doctor Strange?
Okay, it's funny because a lot of people I remember before the movie came out being like, Doctor Strange wouldn't be reckless enough to like do this spell and do that. And it's like, first of all, do you guys remember how Doctor Strange got his powers? Man was texting and driving and like went off a cliff. This man is reckless. I mean, he's not even in the movie as much as I thought he would be.
Yeah.
He was over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours. Like, we only really saw him in the mirror dimension, which, I mean, that was very, very cool. I loved that scene. And we saw him a bit before that. Like, I don't know. I get why he's trying to, like, control Peter. Because, yeah, Peter did kind of ruin everything. And I wish we got to see more of him. Because originally the movie was supposed to be marketed as like Civil War, but Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange, which I think would have been interesting if they did do that. But then if they did that and the movie came out the way it did, I'd be like so disappointed the lack of Doctor Strange. But I just wish we got to see more of him in the movie because I didn't get a really vibe with his character too much. Like he had his fun, snarky lines, but other than that, he did make me cry when he said, people who like love and care about you will forget you. When he said we, I was like, dang, you got me there. But yeah, I just wish we saw more of him.
Yeah, I feel like for me, Doctor Strange was one of the weaker characters, but also that's not a bad thing because
Yeah,
it really allowed Spider-Man to shine. I'm kind of glad they didn't go with the civil war of Doctor
same.
versus Peter or what Doctor versus Peter Strange. I'm losing my mind today.
It's okay, me too.
Strange versus Peter Parker because
Yeah,
again, I feel like it would have centered, it kind of would have been very similar to that whole Tony Stark and Peter Parker
yeah,
sort of thing. And I just don't think like that would have been the best story arc to go with Peter Parker because I don't know how they would have been able to show how selfless he is sort of
yeah.
in
If he
that
has someone
moment.
influencing him.
Um, so I'm really glad that he was not in the movie too much, but also at the
Yeah,
same time, what we saw in the movie, I honestly thought that Doctor Strange was gonna be like have a much bigger role on the behind the scenes because I
Mm,
thought I was sold on the fact that like I was not surprised that this was a reckless thing Doctor Strange would do, but for me, I thought this was gonna be a Doctor Strange variant who was trying to open up the
that'd be so
multiverse,
cool.
and that Spider-Man was the best way, or like one of the best ways he could do open up this multiverse and bring this chaos and like diverge these different universes. So I was convinced that this was evil Strange that we were seeing, and the one time when I was watching the movie, the one thing that kind of convinced me was when I saw that goatee template. You know, like I don't know if you saw the
Yeah,
box, but I
yeah.
saw
That
the goatee
MJ was
template,
holding.
and I was like, oh, maybe like there is a variant of Doctor Strange. In order to be the real one, he's like using a goatee template. But I think towards the end, like I was sort of convinced that this was like our Doctor Strange, but
Yeah.
I don't know. A part of me is still a little bit
Still,
like
like maybe it's the one we saw in the
maybe,
post-credit
yeah,
scene.
maybe it's the one we saw in the post credit scene because like why not? Like why like we don't know because
Yeah,
we
you
don't
never know with Marvel.
yeah, because we don't know if also like we know No Way Home takes place, right? After WandaVision. But
Yeah.
the thing is, we don't know where the Loki series takes place in parallel to Phase 4 events. And if
Mhm.
the Loki series takes place before the events of No Way Home, who's to say that the multiverse wasn't already open by the time that No Way Home takes place and these variants are coming in? And the reason that these like other variants of Peter Parker and the reason that the multiverse was able to open up so seamlessly in No Way Home is because it was already open in the first place. Like, I know Doctor Strange is powerful, but he doesn't not know too much about the multiverse. So, how would the multiverse be able to
Yeah.
open up because of one spell, right? So, I just feel like, unless it was like a variant of Strange or unless the multiverse was already on its way to opening and this spell just sort of made it so that it was really easy to transcend multiple universes. Like I know we're kind of getting off topic from Stranger, but I'm trying to make sense of the timeline. Like
The timeline's
that
always confusing. Like,
like that's why it made sense for all of these
yeah,
variants to come in if the multiverse was already sort of on its way to opening if Loki took place before the events of No Way Home. But
yeah.
yeah, I just think it was really funny how Peter Parker was able to beat Strange using geometry though.
I loved that. It's like good on him. You know what? Math is better than magic, I guess. Like
Yeah, like math
hilarious. It was hilarious. Like
math I just think it also goes to show that like I think that was where it kind of convinced me that maybe it is our Strange because like Strange kind of obviously does think of himself as being a little bit overconfident in his
mhm.
abilities,
Very
and
cocky.
the fact that he was able to literally get beat by a teenager in the Grand Canyon for 12 hours because of math is like, yeah, maybe you should like take some things into consideration for next time. But
Yeah.
no, Doctor Strange was a fun addition though, and I think I was really happy with what he got. And the fact that he was a weaker character was not a
Yeah.
detriment to him, but rather a positive because it allowed Spider-Man to shine and really be like Spider-Man at this
Yeah,
point.
I definitely agree. Because I thought going into this that maybe he was going to be like replacement Tony Stark for Spider-Man, like his new like father figure. And I'm kind of glad that Peter didn't really end up with a father figure. I mean, like kind of Toby and Andrew, but they're not really father figures. It's more like, role model
Mentors,
figures.
yeah.
Yeah, mentors.
So I'm glad that he was not as much in the movie as I thought he would be.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on to the villains. So for the villains, there's obviously there were five villains, right?
Yeah.
Did you think there was gonna be a Sinister Six that they would do
I
reveal in
was
the movie?
hoping, like, I thought maybe somehow one of Tom's villains would be in it, like Vulture or Mysterio. I know he's dead, but like all these other villains are dead too. Like, he could have come back, or Vulture could have like gone out of jail. So I was like, oh, we're gonna have like a twist in the movie. One of them's gonna come in, and they never did, but I'm completely fine with that. I think the movie, like, as we've seen, the Spider-Man 3 In the Amazing Spider-Man 2, really struggled with having multiple villains. But I'd say No Way Home did it perfectly. They had 5 villains, which is more than both those movies had, yet they did it so well.
Yeah, no, I gotta agree with you. I'm glad that like I was also thinking that I was really sold on Mysterio for making a cameo for some reason. Like I
Right?
didn't even want him to be in the movie completely, but I just thought he would like come in. And at the end of the day, I'm not disappointed that he didn't at all, even though I would have liked to see it. And you were right, like they were able to handle 5 villains really well, considering that other Spider-Man movies in the past struggled to have like multiple villains in one
Yeah.
movie. And probably because it was not a multiverse. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like when you had like multiple villains in the other movies, it may have just seemed a little bit unrealistic that Spider-Man could defeat all 3 of them.
And it's
Like, I don't
also
know.
like with those movies, they had to set up the villains. Like
Yeah,
in Spider-Man 3, we were introduced to Sandman, Venom, and like we already knew James Franco's Harry, but like we fully saw him go evil in that movie. So that's 3 characters. 2 of them you have to get their entire backstory and see them become villains. And then with James Franco, you just have to see him become a villain. And then the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the same thing. It's like Electro and their emo Harry. You have to get their backstories and how they became villains. But with this, it was like, I know their backstory. Like, I'm here. I know they're evil. I know what happened to them. And it worked really well.
maybe the detriment of those 2 originals having too many villains was actually a strength of this one.
Yeah, I would say so.
Who knows? Let's get into the villains, and I think we can just talk about each of them. And obviously, for some of them, we'll have a lot less to say because there were villains that played a much larger role in this movie than others. So why don't we start with Lizard? Like, fire away your thoughts on Lizard.
He was there. I mean, he was barely in it. It was cool to see him again, obviously, but literally, if he wasn't in the movie, I think I would not have cared. It would have been the same exact movie for me. Yeah, he was just there. He was the cool dinosaur in the room. He had one of the one line that I'm like, that sounds so weird, and it was when what was it? It was when MJ was like telling them like, I'm gonna press this, I'll press this button, and then he goes, no way, that's his girlfriend, no way. And just the way he said, I'm like, this sounds so fake and weird, and that's the only thing I really remember about his character.
For me, I was surprised how much of the comedy that Lizard had.
Yeah,
like I was really surprised the amount of like comedic punches and things he said. Like I don't know, especially when he was like, oh, and when he was stuck in that truck and he was like, and so here it begins or something like that. And
yeah.
I was surprised by how much of like comedic lines that he got and like the punch of the comedy too with the dinosaur. But
dinosaur.
He was just there. He was just chilling. He was just being your dinosaur, so not much. Let's get into Sandman.
I really loved how they introduced Sandman in it, because in Spider-Man 3, it does end with like him and Peter, like they do get along and like they have like a mutual understanding. So in this, the fact that he goes right away to help Peter, like fighting Electro, I'm like, yeah, that's nice to see that, because it wouldn't make sense for them to just have him like be evil trying to kill Peter right away. So I really enjoyed his introduction. But other than that, he was also more used just for like comedic relief and didn't do much else. But I did enjoy him more than Lizard.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to have a slight different opposite opinion because I was a little I don't know if I was disappointed, but I was a little confused by Sandman's storyline, because I really did like the way that they set him up like in helping Peter, but then I was confused towards the end why he was going against Peter.
Yeah,
like, that's true. Him helping find his daughter. I was just really confused on like why he turned, because he was like one of the villains that was like set up to like help Peter at the start, and then I just didn't really understand like why he turned towards the end. So for me, like that was sort of the detriment with his with his villain, like with his storyline they chose from him. But obviously he wasn't the main villain they decided to center on, so I wasn't like too disappointed. But if we're like looking at him as individually, I was just very confused by the direction they took him in, and like, thus disappointed by what we kind of saw of Sandman.
Yeah, because it was like at first he was like, yeah, I just want to go home. And I don't know really what happened. I'm trying to think, like, I know I've seen this movie 3 times. So I'm like, he just kind of left when everyone else was like, I no longer want to like be part of this. Like, I don't know if he was just trying to get out of there, but like in that time, why was he fighting them at the end? But like you said, like he was such a small character that it's just like, yeah, like I just kind of didn't even notice that since he wasn't really that important. But yeah, that is weird. Maybe I don't know. I'll let you know after I watch it again if I notice
maybe
anything new.
maybe there's something I missed because there's a lot going on in this movie with each of the villains that
Yeah.
I just did not pick up on certain things. But I just feel like from what I remember, there wasn't like a clear explanation on why he switched sides. It might have something to do with his daughter. I don't know. Like I feel like there was some line he may have said in the apartment, but it was a very small detail. So I was just like,
Yeah, because like they all went to the Statue of Liberty because they wanted the box, and they did want to like go home with the box but not be cured. Like, why would he be against being cured? Then you're not
right.
like a sand dude. Like, don't you want to be human?
Yeah, because it allows him to see his family better too, right? So
Yeah.
I was a little confused on that, but Sandman was obviously not like one of the main villains, so it was not really like a huge disappointment.
Yeah, didn't ruin it for me or anything.
No, did not ruin it. Oh, for sure. Who is the next one? Right, let's talk about Electro.
Okay. I know the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is I hate it on the movie, but I always enjoy Electro. He is my favorite Spider-Man line, or one of them, because in it he says to Ryan from The Office, he goes like Ryan from The Office, he says, yeah, and I'm Spider-Man. And Electro just goes all up to him. He's like, you ain't no Spider-Man. He a Leo, you a Sagittarius. And the way he says it, it's just so like weird, like unnatural and hilarious. So seeing him in this, I kind of wish he was more of the nerd him that we saw before. But like I understand it is Jamie Foxx. You got to make him like hot shit in the movie. But I enjoyed him. He also like I'm shocked he wasn't a bigger role in the movie. I thought he was gonna be like up like front, not front and center, but like up there with like Doc Ock and Green Goblin. I guess he was compared to like the other two. He was more of a main character, but he was just there having like, I want my powers, which at least for him, I understood like, yeah, you just want to like take your electricity home and be able to be a bad person. But he also had a line I enjoyed in this movie when he was like, I thought you'd be black. And Andrew's just like, I'm sorry. That was funny. But yeah, I don't know.
I was confused about with Electro was that I thought he wanted to stay in this universe because he had a lot of powers. So he wanted to destroy the box so that he wouldn't get sent back.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. Ignore me. You're right. Yeah, he just was like, it was weird though, him in this universe. Like, why did his powers change and no one else's? Like, that's like, I get they're basically the same, but like, why was he no longer blue? Which, I mean, it looks a lot better, but it was like
I think
he was at the start when like Sandman went around him.
Yeah.
But like I don't know why Sandman going around him would really, unless that's like an actual science thing that I don't understand. But yeah, it was like the box I think made the whole movie more confusing for me because everyone had different motives with it that they get so like crossed in my mind.
Yeah, I was confused at what the villains were trying to do with the box at the end. Like I was like, wait. Wait. Because the box had the spell trapped in it so that they would be sent home, right?
Yeah.
And I think the villains wanted the box to destroy it so that they could stay in this universe because universe
that they don't die. But then Sandman wanted to go home. So why? I don't know. I don't like thinking about the movie's flaws. It's a perfect movie.
No, I think there's just so much going on, but I think what happened is that the villains wanted the box so that they could destroy it, stay in the universe, and retain their powers. Because when they were going home, they would be sent home cured. And they didn't want to be sent home. Like, I don't think they had an issue going home, but the plan was for them to be sent home cured. Right?
And they didn't. Electro especially did not want to lose his powers. Like.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So I think that was like the premises of the movie. And I'm sure like there's some reason that like, I feel like there's definitely like a reason for Sandman. I just can't remember the tiny detail of like
the
change of heart.
Yeah. I'm sure I hope so. Otherwise it'd be a little bit confusing. But yeah, Electro, he was just kind of, I don't know. He was cool looking in this movie. I liked when he took the arc reactor. I'm like, damn, you know what? Like that is gonna definitely help your powers probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like Jamie Foxx's performance was incredible. When he first came on screen, my sister was like, "Oh, he's hot." And I was like, okay, yes,
They made him
yes.
hot in this movie. Like
I
they
know
had
they
him
made him
ugly in
really
the
good
Amazing.
looking. Like
Yeah,
they
like
removed, they completely like did not have that nerdiness that they had from the Amazing
yeah,
Spider-Man too.
the
But
comb over, the glasses, the ugly teeth. They're like, okay, you know what? We'll let you look good in this one, as making up for that horrible movie we put you in.
yeah, no, I think Electro was pretty good. I understood actually why he wanted to stay in this universe too, because I feel like obviously in this one he would be loved. He thought he would be loved. He thought he
Yeah,
would be like a little
and
bit
that's all he's
revered,
ever
and
wanted. Like
he wanted like he thought he would get attention. And obviously, like when you were stripping him of his powers, like that's what the initial like
yeah,
thingy they put inside, like they gave it to him. When you were stripping him of that, you're pretty much removing the one thing that like makes him
the
like
one thing
a
he
little bit
likes
more
about himself,
powerful. Right, exactly.
like
One thing he
he
likes about himself.
hates himself. I'd say that man was living a sad life before he became Electro. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think like his arc was actually one of the ones that made the most sense in the movie and like the most easiest to follow. So I actually quite enjoyed Electro in this movie. But after Electro, let's talk about the two main ones, which is obviously or let's start with where who do you want to start with? Doc Ock or Green Goblin?
I think we should start with Doc Ock because I have a lot more to say about Green Goblin. So we'll go with Doc Ock first,
Okay.
or if that's okay.
Oh, I don't mind. I was like, I'm just gonna let you because I've been like, let's go from here to here to here, and you're just been sitting there and be like, yeah, here are my thoughts, and I'm just like, so that's why I wanted to let you, I wanted to
Okay.
know who you wanted to start with. So
Yes.
fire away your thoughts on
Yes.
Doc Ock.
Doc Ock. Okay, well, not the Amazing Spider-Man, just Spider-Man 2. That is, I'd say, most people's favorite Spider-Man movie live action up until now. Now more people's they're changing because Doc Ock has always been a really like interesting villain, and seeing him in his cool arms, I really enjoyed him in this movie, and I'm so glad they redeemed him. And it was so nice to see, and yeah, I really liked him and Peter's chemistry in the movie, like on the bridge, even when he was just like, you're not Peter Parker. What the heck is this? And then like he had funny lines. He had some weird lines, but he also had like funny lines. And he did help the team a good amount. And just him being redeemed was really nice. Cause I'd say out of all of them, him and Norman were like the two I was most hoping to see redeemed, but obviously out of those two characters, he was more likely since his wasn't a literal like two egos. He was just being controlled by a pair of arms, like not pair of arms, there's like more, but by his tentacles. And him at the end when he like pulled up when Electro was like electrocuting Toby and Andrew, and he grabbed them. I was like, oh my gosh, no, don't tell me he went back. What the heck? But then he actually helped them. I was like, this is incredible. I'm so glad that he was good in this one. Well, yeah, he was mainly good in this one. So yeah, that he was good in this one.
Yeah, I think this like movie cemented for me why Doc Ock is my favorite Spider-Man villain. Like once I watched Spider-Man 2, I just really fell in love with like Doc Ock. I was like,
Yeah.
this is my favorite Spider-Man villain, and this movie just showed me more why he is. I like never believed that first of all Doc Ock is a Spider-Man villain, at least what they showed in Spider-Man 2. He created the arms, which, was his own invention, and
Yeah.
they overtook him, but then he lost his wife because of that. And I understood why he wanted to go after Spider-Man for that.
Yeah.
And then I think what really made me fall in love with his character was how at the end of the movie he died, sacrificing himself for the arms, and like that was really sad to watch. So I was so glad when they brought Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock in this movie. And I love Doc Ock so much. Like all the references that he had, the way that he talked about the like individual, like especially here, not Harry, no, Norman Osborn, the way that he had the conversations that he had with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and the decisions that he made were just like it just cemented me why I love him as a villain so much, because he's not a villain, he's just trying to get by, right? Like, and he will do what he can to try and get by, which is what makes him a villain, but like internally his motivations are not anything like villainously related, if that makes sense. And I think that's like usually my favorite type of villain. It's where they do things that are villainous, but like internally your motivations aren't villainous.
Yeah, like a villain that you understand why they're doing it.
Yeah,
Not like,
but it's like he's not exactly an anti-hero either, though,
yeah, that's
right?
exactly what I was thinking when you said he's not a villain. I'm like, is he an anti-hero? Not
He's not
really.
exactly an anti-hero either, because
He's just a dude. Like
he's just a dude. But yeah, he's in some ways he kind of reminds me of the Eternals, because the Eternals are not villains, but they're also not great either, especially someone like Ajax, right? Like,
yeah,
she is not, I know we're talking about Spider-Man,
it's
but
okay.
she's not a villain, but she's not great either, especially when you consider what she did, like
what she kept from everyone,
she made with Icarus, and everyone. And that's what I really love. And I was like, that's what I see in Doc Ock. So I just really love him. That's all I gotta say. I know I went long on Doc Ock, but I have way more to say on Doc Ock than Green Goblin. So
I'll go.
I will let you take I will let you take the stage with Green Goblin, though.
Oh my goodness! Let me just say, Willem Dafoe, his performance. This man is incredible. Like, I can't believe he is like what, in his like 60s or something, and he is still kicking ass in these movies. Seeing him again, that is what really took me back to my childhood self. I know I wasn't like alive when the first one came out, but I was raised on that movie, and it's only a few months older than me. And he just does the villain so well. He does Norman and Green Goblin. And I can separate the two. Like, I can see that they are two different people, and I can see the pain Norman is caused by Green Goblin, and I can see how insane Green Goblin truly is. Like, in this movie, especially when Tom Holland is just punching him, beating him up in the face, not when he's like actually about to kill him, but in Happy's like apartment area. Green Goblin's just laughing, so happy, like getting a kick out of this. And I mean, that man truly is a menace. He is Green Goblin. He's just ready to like hurt everyone. He does not care. He even is like abusive to the person whose body he is like in. And when he killed May, my goodness, I was ready to throw hands with this fictional man. But it's such a struggle, because Willem Dafoe, like, I love this man. I'm like, he's so talented. But then I'm like, but I also hate you. How could you do all these horrible things to like these characters I love? And the fact he's able to play the same character almost 20 years apart with the same amount of like talent, same amount of effort, I just found that so incredible. And I heard that like he was doing some of his own stunts. I'm like, good for you. Like, that is really cool. And I think Green Goblin and Spider-Man, like their fight scene, the one on the shield, is probably one of like my favorite ones I've seen in the MCU, because it felt really real. It wasn't like one of the ones where you're just seeing like people like with powers doing stuff, which I mean, that's always fun to see. But this was just like, you could feel Tom's anger, and you can feel like Green Goblin, everything, just like both of their reasons for fighting, their energy. And it's just so good. And also their fight scene in Happy's apartment was incredible, because Tom Holland was using moves from the Spider-Man PS4 game, which I love. And I was so excited to see that. And just everything. Green Goblin like was the drive of this movie. He was like what caused most of Tom's conflicts, I would say, other than like the stuff Tom did. But like, he's the one who like killed May, which led the whole second half of this movie. And yeah, he really, for me, Green Goblin stole the show. He stole like for the villains. He stole the movie. Like, he was so good.
I have to agree with everything you hit. Like, for me, Green Goblin is, in terms of villains I enjoy, Green Goblin scares me. So I don't.
So scary. I was afraid of him as a child.
I don't enjoy watching him. But if we're talking about villains that are done well, Green Goblin is like up there with Doc Ock. Like, Green Goblin is menacing. He is a menace to watch. And William Dafoe's performance was so well done.
Chef's kiss. I'm incredible.
Like the way that he's like the cynical laugh. I think my favorite part about William Dafoe's acting is the facial expressions that he brings as Norman Osborn and then as Green Goblin. The way that they like switch, and even like the voice fluctuation.
You can really tell the difference between the two.
Tiny details. He's so good at like those tiny details of like Green Goblin and Norman Osborn. And it's such a brilliant to watch. And like that scene on the bridge, if there's one thing that I walked out of Spider-Man No Way Home thinking about constantly, is that scene, not on the bridge, sorry. The shield.
Yeah.
Tom's anger, Tom's emotions, Dafoe's cynical acting. Like, it was that like scene keeps you on the edge of your seat. You can
Yeah.
feel the anger, you can feel the frustration, you can feel the cynic, you can feel the just like the evilness radiating out of like Green Goblin. It was, and Green Goblin, like you said, drove really the plot of this movie, especially in the second half. Like the first half was like Tom Holland's like Peter Parker driving the plot of this movie, and then the second half was like pretty much Green Goblin and his action, which is
Yeah.
funny because he was not even there for like a good, like after Aunt May's death, he was not there for like
Yeah.
a good chunk. And then he just comes back and it's like
It's
still
just
driving
like,
it.
yeah.
So I gotta say, like, he was probably the villain that the second one that I enjoyed watching the most, and probably the villain that was like done well the most, you know?
Yeah, definitely the
Okay.
best done in this movie.
Yeah. Well, now that we finished the villains, let's talk about MJ and Ned.
They okay, I'm just gonna start with this. At the end, I totally thought they were gonna be dating when Tom like goes into like MJ's work and sees them together. I was like, if they're dating now, I would like, it would have broken my heart. But I really enjoyed them. Ned having powers. I mean, who would have seen this coming? I love it though, and I'm hoping somehow Doctor Strange remembers so we could see more of this in upcoming movies. Since it's like, I know like it's confusing when people do and don't remember now. MJ also, I love her. Like, she is such a baddie, like a queen, and I love that she's such a supportive girlfriend. And she, and I really hope her and Tom find their way back to each other in the movies because it's gonna hurt. And I feel like no, we still saw a good amount of them, but I somehow wish we saw more of them. Like, especially Ned. I'm surprised he didn't end up becoming a villain. I know a lot of people thought this, like he was gonna like somehow be set up to turn into Hobgoblin. And at the start of the movie, they kept showing how he was like a third wheel to Peter and MJ. And I totally was like, oh, they're totally setting this up with like everything. Like, they seem so annoyed by him, the way how the people are like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Spider-Man's best friend. Totally thought they were setting him up to be like, that would have been cool, him like the sixth member of the Sinister Six. Totally different movie, but it would have been interesting to see. And I wish they gave MJ more. Like, as I'm saying this, I'm trying to like think of things, and it's like she was just kind of like carrying the box and like supporting Peter is what she did. I wish we got to see more of her being like a badass.
Yeah, we got to see a little bit more backstory, which I know would have been difficult to do with, you know, because this is such a huge movie, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about MJ and her motivations for helping Peter so much specifically. Because the thing is, like in the other two previous movies, we've seen that she's always kind of shut off and, you know, like she doesn't really care. And I know that Peter brings out the best in her, but I feel like with Gwen Stacy was done really well, to where Gwen Stacy was helping like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but also at the same time she had her own motivation.
Yeah, she was like her own character outside of him.
But, so I feel like that, and like MJ, it's like she was helping Peter Parker, and I understood why she was helping him, and she did like have her moments where, you know, like you saw her as a character, like if you expect disappointment, like that one line she said, like was really
never be disappointed.
To insert. But I feel like I would have loved to see more of that explored. Like, why does she think that way? You know, like just a conversation.
Why she's a deeply mistrusting person.
Yeah, like why?
Well, yeah.
And I don't know if it's because, and I think it's maybe because like they didn't show that in the previous movies when they should have showed it, and that's why we couldn't understand in this one. Because I don't know if this is something I would have loved to see in this movie, since we already have so much going on. But if they would have showed that in the previous movie, I feel like her character would have been more enjoyable to watch. Yeah, not enjoyable, just more sense.
Yeah. One thing about her character though, which I thought like, I'm like, no one reacted in my theater. So I'm like, oh, did we already know this? But then like I looked up and we didn't. That her last name is Watson. Like, I knew she was Michelle Jones, but she is like MJ Watson is her name, which is the same as Mary Jane Watson. So I'm like, oh, so like, does that mean she's gonna have the same backstory? Because she also says like, I don't go by Watson. Like, I don't use that last name. So I'm like, I would like to actually see why you don't use this, because I'm just gonna assume you're having the same backstory as Mary Jane somewhat, but I have no idea. And I wish they went more into that.
Yeah, but I would still feel like she's not as bad as MJ.
Oh gosh,
Toby. Like MJ in the Toby movies was truly, I believe the word is fridged, right? Like when she's fridged. So
they just made her.
I just feel that's a conversation for another time. But I just wish she'd like I just wish we got to see more of her before, so the decisions that she made in No Way Home would, um, you could like feel them more. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
like we're
And then
like
yeah,
understand her more,
yeah,
like
same thing
care
with
more.
Ned too. Like I feel like I wish we got to see Ned's Filipino like background and
Yeah.
sort of that in the other Spider-Man movies before No Way Home, because
Mhm.
I feel like seeing that part of him added another layer to him of just his cultural identity almost. And I
Definitely.
really wish we got that sooner. And I was just confused by the powers thing because I thought he was able to open up these portals because he had Doctor Strange's ring on. Like that was like one of the most like confusing plot points in the movie for me was how does the powers thing and how all of a sudden did he just have powers? Because I thought he was opening them because of he had the ring. Um, and not just because like he had powers. And I don't know, I feel like I was kind of disappointed with that character decision they made with him. I wish that he did turn into the Hobgoblin.
It would have been wild if he did.
And I wish that they did not give him powers because for me it just didn't make sense.
I mean, him having powers led to like the best moment of cinema in a while.
True.
But yeah,
but I just wish it was shown like, oh, he was able to do that because he had the ring, not because like he has powers inside.
Because maybe I haven't watched Doctor Strange in a while, but like in earlier in No Way Home, Ned says like, "Oh, my nana always says we have magic in our like family." So and it is like seems like a joke, but is he only able to use the like powers because he has a ring on, or is it like he has the powers and just having the ring on makes it so like you can really like excel at them? I don't know. Doctor Strange was a movie I'm like his powers and all that I'm kind of like iffy on. I don't know them.
Like that's what really confused me is because technically with Steven's maybe like these are things that you're born with, like because you know how Steven was talking about how people have explored cosmic energy. First of all, when he mentioned cosmic energy, I almost lost my mind because I was like, what the fuck is this like some sort of like celestial Eternals connection? Because
that's what I thought too.
That's what like cosmic energy comes from, right? And I was like, is this gonna be like an origin story a little bit more for just how the idea of Doctor Strange and everything exists? Like they're sort of oh my god, I just have like a crazy theory.
Yeah, share it.
But it's not even okay. So what if the idea of cosmic energy and the Celestials and the Eternals are the reason that Doctor Strange and all of those sorcerers exist? It's they're trying to exercise that cosmic energy that the Eternals use, but in a way that humans can use it. I think Doctor Strange. I think the origin of like Kamartaj and the Sorcerer, because the Sorcerer Supreme is also immortality.
Yeah.
Who is immortal? The
Eternals. Yo.
This is like not even related to Spider-Man, but the moment he mentioned like cosmic energy, I was like, every time there's a cosmic reference, it has to be the Celestials. Like not even the Eternals. It has to be something connected to the okay, I need to see more of that explore. That's a conversation for another time. Anyways, no, so there was that. So I was just like confused on how that works exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I wasn't disappointed. Like I love their dynamic with Peter. Like I think that is what really helped them shine is every time they're with Peter, you really see them at their best. So that's what I loved about it.
Yes. Supportive friends. Supportive girlfriend.
The end. Let's talk about Aunt May.
First off, R.I.P. Aunt May. I also wish we saw more of her in this movie. I feel like that's like a thing I'm saying about a lot of characters, but she wasn't in it much. I'm glad we got to see Feast, and like I know we saw it a bit in Far From Home, like her doing the fundraiser for like people who were blipped, I think. But her like that she is someone who cares a lot for the community. I just wish it was set up more in other movies, because in Homecoming, I don't think there's anything mentioning that she like cares about people. That sounds mean, but you know what I mean. Like there's nothing shown cares about her community. Far From Home, it's just like the fundraiser, which I get she's not in that movie much because like she's in a whole different country than Peter. But it was just like, oh, she's like the head of this whole organization. What? Like if I hadn't already known about like Feast from other Spider-Man material, I would have been like, I did not know you were such a caring person, Aunt May. Like that's for this Aunt May specifically, like as horrible as this sounds, like what I'm saying, like they've just kind of set her up in other movies to just be like the hot aunt. So seeing her, so it's nice seeing her have a personality, but it was just like, it felt kind of like random, but it felt too like, especially like, she got a personality and then they killed her, which I knew she was going to die going in. Like I had that prediction, but I was still like, when it happened, like,
And then
I don't know if this is the like right place to bring it up. I also like did Uncle Ben ever exist in their universe? Is what like a lot of the stuff when the Peters were talking made me wonder because Aunt May never mentioned him, and they all were like, "Oh, Uncle Ben normally says that." So did she learn that from him, or like? But yeah, I really.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe like I feel like Uncle Ben existed. I just think that maybe Tom Holland's Spider-Man did not grow up with Uncle Ben the way that the other might have.
Yeah, but like Uncle Ben's the one who's Tom or Peter's related to, like by blood. Like so Aunt May's through marriage. So like I don't know. It's confusing. Hopefully we get answers for like in the freshman year series.
Yeah.
But I really and Aunt May and Happy, oh my god, when it showed them breaking up, I was like, no, they were supposed to be endgame. How could they do this? And Happy was so sad. And yeah, I can't believe they killed her. But I also can. Yeah.
I think I'm going to agree with everything you said. The only thing I have to add is through our discussion of the side characters, I realized that the way that they were shown is kind of where my not my biggest issue, but my critique that I have of the movie, and that's the plot. And it's because a lot of the things and the decisions that we see the side characters make, it's left as confusing because we didn't see them explored in the past movies. Like the reason that Peter Parker decided to help these villains is because of what Aunt May said, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, how does Aunt May like where did Aunt May like have this personality from and these values? It's because we have not seen these in the previous movies. For me, it was like a little bit more shocking to see like Peter take this route in the plot, and the plot we'll get to a little bit later, but I think it's when you're missing these smaller elements from the side characters, it can make overall the entire movie just a little bit more confusing to watch because you're left with these questions. And that's where I'm going to leave up with Aunt May. Like, yes. Oh, I also have to say, it was very sad to see her die. I really did love her, and it was seeing like Uncle Ben die all over again. Especially when she said, with great power comes like great responsibility.
Yeah, she changed it a little bit. I was
it was a little bit changed, but the idea was there. It really I love that reference. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of leave off Aunt Maywood there. We got to discuss the other two cameos that we had. The two cameos I want to know first, and this is huge spoiler territory. Yes, huge. So we're really gonna get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about your theater reaction first, because we're gonna talk about Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's appearance in this movie, and just even though I knew they were coming in, I was a little shocked when I saw them.
Yeah.
But what was your theater's reaction?
Okay.
What was your reaction?
So, as I mentioned earlier in this, I was at the Soups fan event.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know how Soups is. Just imagine 400 people like that. And even before Tobey and Andrew showed up, when Matt Murdock / Daredevil was the lawyer earlier in the movie, I didn't hear a single thing he said other than, I'm a good lawyer, when he caught the brick, that because everyone was screaming, freaking out. Because that one especially was more iffy about if he would be in the movie, Yeah. There was a leak of it, but it was that could be fake, that it would be weird. And I can't believe he was literally 10 minutes into the movie, he showed up and then was never in it again.
I know.
But luckily, next time I saw the movie, people didn't know, people hadn't watched Daredevil or knew who he was, I guess. So there's one or two people cheering, so I was able to hear it then. But with Tobey and Andrew, oh my goodness. I jumped out of my seat screaming. I had Liz, new to Marvel, on TikTok. She was next to me. We were both just oh my gosh. And I had my other friend here. We were all just screaming. Everyone was screaming. You could not hear a single word that whole time. And this is just when Andrew showed up. When Tobey showed up, eruption. Oh my goodness. We all knew. And when it was Andrew though, I only noticed this at my first screening. So the Soups one. At the other two, the cheering came a little later. But the Soups one, literally, when he turns around and you just see the huge eyes, everyone knew right away that was going to be Andrew's, because he has the bigger Spider-Man eyes out of all of them. So the screaming started immediately. While at the other ones I've been at, it was more people being oh my god, do you think is that? But oh my goodness, it was for Tobey and Andrew being there was my childhood complete. Like I said, I grew up on the Tobey movies. My entire childhood, obsessed. They were everything. Seeing him again, I died. Seeing Andrew, I remember seeing his movies in theaters, and a lot of people give hate to his movies, and I'll agree, those are horrible movies, but him and Emma Stone in those movies, they are incredible. He is incredible. And also, I Andrew Garfield, is such a talented actor. I'm like so in love with him. So seeing him just like in all his hotness and talent, I was dying, and just everything about it, I just couldn't believe it was actually happening. Like you said, we had like known for months, like, yeah, they're in the movie. But then like actually being like, oh, they're actually in this movie was like, oh my God, just everything I could have ever asked for. And I feel like the way they introduced them was really good. Like, I know it's like we said, it's kind of weird Ned having powers, but the way they like hopped in and were just like, yeah, I'm Peter Parker, but I'm not your Peter Parker. And like they could have made it more cringy, definitely trying to make more references. Like, this isn't related to the Peter Parkers. Like when Green Goblin said, I'm somewhat of a scientist myself. Like it was cringy, but I still like loved it just because it was the callback to like that meme line. But with them, they could have totally made their entrances way more cringy, way more like done it worse. I just think they did it really well. And I think it was smart that they had Andrew before Toby introduced, because there are probably a lot more people who would be screaming over Toby than Andrew. So that way the hype was just building. You're like, yes, that was our reaction. How was your theater's reaction? Were people insane or?
So my theater's reaction, I would say, was similar to when you described, obviously, to the screenings you went to after Soup's event. Like I can't even imagine being at Soup's event. Like obviously, like I can imagine it being crazy, but I'm sure it was like crazier than people can just think of. It might have been. Yeah. But so first of all, can I just say, like, I sometimes regret not growing up on the Spider-Man movies because I like didn't have that feeling of obviously seeing, like, I was telling my sister about how much No Way Home means to people who grew up on all three movies, and she was like, I can't imagine, growing up on all these three movies and then watching No Way Home and seeing all these heroes come together. She was like, that must mean so much to the people who grew up on them. She's like, I can't process that. And I was like, I know, like, it's crazy. And I watched the Spider-Man movies. So for me, I was still very hyped to see them because I understood like who they were and their significance. But obviously I didn't have like a nostalgic attachment towards it just because I did not grow up. But for me, I was still so hyped to see, like, for me, I was just like, are you actually telling me they're in this movie? I think I was just right? Like, I think everyone was just the woman was too stunned to speak, man.
Definitely.
Also, my theater, like when Matt Murdock came in, actually more people cheered than I expected. Like, not
good for Matt.
They were like surprised. They were like, "Oh my God, like it's Daredevil," and I was like, "Woo, like Daredevil." And my sister was like, "We get it." I was like, "No, you be quiet. You do not know what
you don't get it."
I was like, "No, you don't get it." So yeah, and then also for Toby and Andrew, like people were clapping, like they were cheering. I feel like people were more cheering when seeing the three of them together.
Oh my gosh,
that final fight scene, which we'll get into. But like people were like cheering more then, but they were still cheering at seeing like the other two Spider-Man. And like, I like this movie just still showed me why Andrew is my favorite Spider-Man. Like
Andrew in this movie was so incredible, and it really shows like what they could have done if the Amazing Spider-Man movies had good writing.
Like, I know, like Andrew was.
He needs a third movie.
Tom Holland Spider-Man, but like Andrew Spider-Man truly like stole the show from me. Like I'm so I don't even regret saying it because he's just so brilliant in his acting. And after seeing Tick Tick Boom and the amount of range that like Andrew Garfield has, like seeing him as Spider-Man, I can't, especially when how much that the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the amount of criticism and the way that it was screwed over by the studios, and also the way that the press harassed Andrew Garfield over No Way Home, which I don't even know.
He deserves an Oscar for keeping up that act, truly.
I know. And for putting up with it, like it's just, I just absolutely loved him in this movie so much. No. And let's just get like into your thoughts, because I know we started off with the screenings and we were getting into the thoughts, but like why don't we just talk about them individually together, maybe their dynamic with Peter Parker, like spill it all. There's no limit to what you can say.
If I was basing like off this movie, this is kind of similar to what you're saying, like who my favorite is, if it was just off this, I would put Toby last, which is like shocking, and I would put Andrew first. Probably like, yes, Tom Holland did an amazing job, but like this is just based off like the times when they were all together. Like Toby, like it was amazing seeing him, and I can never like, I would love to feel that feeling again of seeing him in the movie for the first time. But Andrew, it's like he had like the comedy and the emotions down so well, which is like the duality of Spider-Man sometimes. Like, God, whenever Gwen was mentioned, if everyone near me would just hear me bawling, because that he was so good. I thought Andrew and Toby's bromance is now my new favorite thing. Literally, like, wait, it is literally my screensaver on my phone, which I didn't take this photo. I got it off the internet, guys. I don't pirate stuff, but like you can see it is them at the end of the movie. I loved it. And I hope we see them again, because I mean, I don't actually like know anything, but I've heard people saying like, oh, they might be in Multiverse of Madness. They might be in what's it called? Secret Invasion, the Nick Fury show. I'm like, yes, please, because they were great. I like Toby was fun, but I don't know, he was more not like just there, but he wasn't like adding as much to the comedy and stuff. Like he did help be a really good mentor to Tom, but like he wasn't as entertaining to watch as Andrew was for me. Like Andrew was so talented, but I would say that Toby was a great mentor. Like he was a supportive dad. Like when Tom's like, not to brag, I was in the Avengers, and he's like, oh, that's amazing. What are the Avengers? Like he's just like there to support. And like when Andrew was like, no, I'm lame, he's like, no, you're not. You're amazing. That scene, filled me with happiness. And this, at any time they were all together, I think like it just made me like, I wish I could feel that euphoria again. It makes me so happy. I mean, I will when I see the movie again, but every time I see them, I just like a part of me explodes because it's incredible. It is like seeing like the person I looked up to as a child, the person I looked up to as well, I'm still a teenager, but you know, like pre-teen, and then like pre-teen, like the same character, the two of them, and then again Tom's who I like as a teen. I was just like all three of them. Like this is my entire life. These characters all together, and I thought their dynamic together was really good. Like they were I think we had already said this like earlier, but like it was one of the best ones I've seen in the MCU, like a group. Like, and it wasn't like them all having the same exact personality. It does show like the difference between, even though Peter Parker is the same, but it shows how he is slightly different in these different universes, but he is still like that big brain boy. Like, and them in the lab when they were all doing like the pointing meme, I was like, but, and I need the behind the scenes of like the three of them interacting. That'll be, it'll like fill my heart, because it was just so, it makes me so happy. I thought they did it really well having the three of them, and I would love to see them all act together again.
I like have to agree with every single point you hit. Like Andrew was far by the most entertaining to watch, but Toby was the one who added the most to the story because of the way that he mentored like Tom, and you know the way that he even like mentored Andrew to some extent, like with the especially that conversation about him being lame. Like Toby added the most to the story. Andrew was the most entertaining to watch and brought a lot of personality to Spider-Man, which I said before, Andrew has the best personality of the Spider-Man. Toby is the best written, and it shows in this movie. It shows. Like Tom Spider-Man, like his strength is interacting with other characters, and it showed because he was the way that like Tom was interacting with Toby and Andrew was so good. And can I just say that Toby and Andrew, for being in one MCU movie, have really enjoyed their duo together. Yes. I love their dynamic, and I don't know if it's because like the actors are really good, but it's like they're the same person, but I love seeing their dynamic. And for me, I don't think I fully processed the fact that I saw all three of them on screen. Like I haven't. I'm just like, I feel like it's almost fake that we saw. Literally. And especially like, we'll talk about action next. Like, let's get into that final fight scene. I still haven't processed the fact that we literally saw three Spider-Man fight on screen, the way that all of them were just using their webs, coordinating with each other. And I'm so glad that they had conflict coordinating with each other, because it really showed like the character of Peter Parker, just how messy can be and like how chaotic, like it was just done to the T. And I was like, so that's why I was so satisfied with their performances and how they were integrated, because there's no flaw with the way they were shown. They were stuck to their Spider-Man roots and the strengths in their own separate series, and those strengths played here, and those strengths were carried. And I'm just so glad it was consistent, because it's sometimes hard to transfer these characters, but like, you can tell John Watts like really would have loved the Spider-Man movies, because
I gave it his all.
I was so happy with it. That's all I gotta say.
I completely agree. Like that fight scene at the end, probably the best thing I've ever seen, like with all of them. And like I've already said, like it's my childhood just coming together when they all swung off each other, like their webs not interconnect, I don't know, they like attached and they like swung. I was just like, ah! Like it was incredible. And them all running and just beautiful. So beautiful. And yeah, it's so hard to like put into words how happy it makes me. And it's so glad I'm so glad we finally know who was the one that kicked / punched Lizard after that trailer.
I'm so much like laughing at okay, so sometimes on my TikTok for you page I'll be scrolling, like especially right now after I've seen the movie, and I'll see like some like denier or like someone calling out a denier, and I'm like, how fucking stupid do you feel right now? Like I want to know how stupid someone who's like Toby and Andrew aren't in the movie feel right now. Like they were literally betting their lives on them not being in the movie and be like, hey, you guys are gonna be disappointed. No. I'm just like,
literally
how dumb do you feel?
So as you can see, I got like the phone case with the 3 of them and the shirt. I had so many people tell me, you're gonna regret buying that when they're not in the movie. I had a coworker who was willing to bet $100 they weren't in the movie. I was like, no, we can do $10, and we did. And guess who got $10 yesterday? And I also bet that Andrew will be in, like, if he's in the movie, he's gonna be the one to catch MJ. So I was making bank off this, but like I'm like, how would you be willing to bet $100 they're not in it? Like, that's insane.
Let's talk about like the references, because I loved every single reference, like from the Uncle Ben to the quote to especially Andrew Garfield and like Gwen Stacy, and the performance that he put up with that, and like the emotions that he showed. The fact that it's been like what 10 years, about almost a little bit less than 10 years since Andrew Garfield has played this character.
Yeah, 2014 was the last time.
But like still so like the same amount of emotion, maybe even better than his performance in The Amazing Spider-Man. Oh my God. I like the Gwen Stacy one. And okay, I was literally telling my sister in the middle of the theater, right? I was like, oh yeah, by the way, like, because she was confused. She's like, why is he so sad over Gwen Stacy? And I was like, oh, because like Gwen Stacy died, because she didn't know. So I was like, oh yeah, because Gwen Stacy died in The Amazing Spider-Man. He had to watch her. And then before MJ fell, I was telling her about like how Gwen dies, and I was like, oh yeah, like Gwen dies, Andrew couldn't save her, so like that's why like him saving her is important. And then she's never seen The Amazing Spider-Man. She's never seen that scene of where Gwen dies. No, this girl walked out of the theater and she told me, I cried when Andrew saved MJ. She was like, I was crying. And I was like, for someone who's never seen the Spider-Man movies, to feel that emotion, it really like again plays into the strength of this movie of like being a Spider-Man movie.
No,
because it was done so well.
It was so good. With, like you're saying, Andrew with the Gwen stuff. I mean, I think I'm pretty like Gwen Stacy is one of my favorite characters ever. Like she's my profile picture on everything. Right. I love Spider-Gwen, and I love like just love interest Gwen. But Emma Stone's portrayal of Gwen, amazing. I can literally remember the night so clearly back in 2014 when I saw The Amazing Spider-Man 2 going in. I was so excited to see my favorite characters back on the big screen, and then that happens. And I was up all night. Like I felt sick to my stomach and I was just crying because I'm like, how can they do this? It was like so rude. And so when I saw the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home and I saw MJ falling, I'm like, Andrew's going to be in this and he's going to catch her. I didn't know how emotional that was going to end up making me though. Because like, okay, TikTok's a horrible place to be if you haven't seen the movie because everyone posts spoilers, but that scene keeps coming up. And every time I see it, I watch it and I just cry because his face when he catches her, I mean, it just shows like, it really is a redemption. I know I've seen people say like, it's so messed up to call it a redemption, but it is like, it's his own redemption to himself. I feel like not like he messed up by not catching Gwen, because he did, he caught her, just, it was like too late. And then her head hit the ground and it was like her back's not, it was very, very intense for like 10-year-old me to see. I can't believe that, but it was just so good the way they did that scene. Because they could have made it like I've been saying for other things, they could have made it a lot more cringy and a lot more awkward. Like he could have actually brought up Gwen, but it's just like, no, everything. He didn't need to say words. Just Andrew's face showed how like much that meant to his Peter. Yeah. And it was incredible. And I think that's definitely my favorite. Like, I guess it's not really a reference per se, but it's like, you know, it is a parallel to like what happened in his movies. Because there are a lot of other things that are just like straight up references. But that scene is so, I think it's genuinely my favorite scene in the movie, which I can probably say a lot of other scenes are also like up there, but that scene, just the amount of emotions it makes me feel every time. And the way like both Andrew and Zendaya are like really good in it, but especially just Andrew's face. I will never ever get over his face in that
How like
scene.
how much that meant to just Andrew to be able to do that. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
why I really need a featurette of the, especially like I just need a featurette of Toby and Andrew talking about
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to put
Yes.
the Spider-Man suits back on, because in the movie it was like so casual, but I'm
Yeah.
sure like how much it meant for them to be back on set and like playing this character,
Yeah.
especially because I know Andrew was someone who really championed Spider-Man. Like he wanted Spider-Man to be bisexual, and I
Yes,
know
he
like
did.
I know like Spider-Man was like his favorite hero growing
Yeah,
up,
like he
and
had a
there's
little
literally like a
costume.
picture, right, of him like
Yes,
dressed up as
that his
Spider-Man.
mom made him.
Right. And I'm just like,
It must have been amazing for
it
him putting
must have
that
been
back
so,
on.
I was like, I
Because he was
really
like,
want to know, like, I
yeah.
need to know what it was like, especially like I love Toby, but like I just really need to know like what it was like for Andrew to
Yeah, it
put that
definitely I
suit
think
back
would mean
on
more to
again.
Andrew. Because like, I mean, he was kind of like screwed over for
Right.
Spider-Man. Like Toby got like even though I know the third Spider-Man movie wasn't supposed to be like their last one, he still got like a good set of movies that everyone always worships. Andrew is someone who was a lifelong fan of Spider-Man, like grew up on the Toby movies also, and then was just like hated on for playing him. But like I can tell that man still had fun. And I just and he was supposed to even be him in the MCU apparently, with then like, it got messy. But like also that would have been crazy straight up if it was Andrew in the MCU. But just for Andrew, I know that must have meant so much. And I'm sure it did for Toby too, but for Andrew especially.
Yeah.
And I mean it probably meant as much like
You know,
for them as it did for the fans seeing them again, like getting
you
all
can
that
also just
love.
like tell how excited I feel like you can see, like even though it wasn't Andrew in the movie, I feel like at the same time I could see how excited almost
Yeah,
Andrew was to be in that suit, and I feel so happy for him. And I almost
me
want to
too.
talk about this other scene, the web shooter scene. No,
Oh
it's
yes.
so
How did
funny.
you do that?
He's like, where does it come from you? And I'm so glad because people were like, I need to see that scene. I need to see that scene. I need to
Yeah.
see that scene. And the fact that they put it in, like, you could tell they really thought about the layers in this movie and how much that they wanted to make this like make it worth for Toby and Andrew.
Yeah.
And they did. And like this was fan service done perfectly.
Yes,
Because they had
100%.
every single reference or parallel or whatever hit the pointing meme, the web shooter, the Gwen and the
The
MJ
quotes, like
parallel,
shit they brought back, like
the way they integrated Uncle Ben into the conversation, the without great power, like I'm just like I think again, like I think the strength of this movie is the way that it truly is a culmination of everything, giving an honor to everything in the past, but
yeah.
also allowing like some of the characters in the past to have a sort of a redemption, and a redemption done well, because I feel like
Yes.
every single person, especially like the main ones, were just ah,
Yeah.
the characters, like the side characters were definitely an issue, but the main ones were just
Done
so
so well.
powerful, and I
Yeah.
love that. I love that about
No,
it.
and it was really nice that like I know I wouldn't technically call it full closure, but for Andrew's character, they did give him like kind of they gave him closure,
Yeah.
which like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, like I know they were canceled also, but like they never got closure. And so it was nice that like, oh, he like feels happy, like that he was able to catch her and like that his brothers, but also, okay, this is just like I guess it's kind of related. When are him and Toby supposed to be? Is that supposed to be them in like 2024? Because all the villains came from right when they were about to die. And if it's supposed to be like Toby and Andrew in like the current year, that means it would have been 10 years since Gwen Stacy died. And like while I guess she was an amazing gal, it took him 10 years to get like that would be insane.
I know.
But like Andrew doesn't age, so you could tell me he was any age. Like that
Yeah.
man's almost 40,
Yeah.
which is insane.
Yeah. I think so the next one that we should probably touch on, we kind of already touched a little bit on throughout our entire conversation, like throughout our conversation we talked a little bit about I think for action, let's just talk about that final fight scene because it was so fucking good. And then for plot though, let's just start with plot, because I feel like we kind of already touched on plot in terms of characters and how they were integrated into the plot, and some of its weaknesses. And like I said, for me the biggest critique was the plot, because I was very confused throughout the story, especially on how they were, maybe just like I don't remember too much from the Spider-Man movies, but how like the way that they were trying to explain the different villains that were brought in, but also, like you were just talking about the way that Toby and Andrew is like, is it 10 years into the future? Like, where are they? And like how everything kind of come together. I think, for me, yeah, it was just like the plot was the most confusing and thus the most weakest part of the film for me, because at some times it just felt very messy, and also it just felt like it was just messy and confusing, but it was like the characters that drove the plot. So at the end of the day, because they paid such good homage to the characters, I think I was able to look past the fact of the plot. That's what I'm going to comment on the plot. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, like, I kind of was just distracted by all the nostalgia watching the
Exactly,
movie,
yeah.
that I'm not like, oh, there's like a plot hole here with this. Like, I'm sure there are things they could have probably done better, but for me, I'm like, I'm having the time of my life watching this.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
this movie's incredible. Yeah, I guess like with the plot, with the box, I did get a little confused, obviously, because I'm like, oh yeah, Electro doesn't want to like go home and just have cool powers there. He wants to stay here. And like, they could have, like we were saying earlier, like had Sandman like somehow explain why he wanted like what his deal with the box was. But like, I would say their plot, they didn't really need one with everything that was going on. They could have just had me stare at a screen of like the 3 Spider-Men hanging out together. I would have been like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. This is all I need. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I saw like, I feel like after people let the movie sit in, I think people started finding little plot holes, because I saw a few TikToks about it on my For You page, like literally starting yesterday. They were like, oh, there's this like little plot hole in Spider-Man No Way Home. And like, there were a few things that people were like, oh, I would change in the plot. But I think because the characters were just done so well, people could honestly overlook it. And
yeah.
I would like definitely have to agree with, you know, the characters were done so well, the fan service was great. So who gives a fuck about if the plot was just a little bit measly? Like, it doesn't really matter. But let's talk about that final fight scene. I know we kind of touched on it, but I just like, for someone like you said, you grew up with Spider-Man, I just want to know your thoughts so bad on how it was to see, like, seeing 3 Spider-Man talk is one thing, but seeing 3 Spider-Man fight together against the villains and just seeing all of that culmination, like, I want to know what you felt.
I wish I could put into like words just how incredibly amazing, like, that made me feel. Like, before, I thought, you know how in Endgame, like when everyone pulls up, how everyone was like so excited seeing that fight scene. I think that times like 10 is how I felt watching this. It's like, oh my goodness, this is like all the heroes / villains that I grew up on fighting each other, and it is so cool. And seeing the different Spider-Man play off each other's like strengths, once they figured out how to work together, was so incredible. Seeing the different villains, I mean, was just cool. And it's just like, it's something I never in my like wildest dreams thought I would see, but here we are, and it's real and it's incredible. It is just everything that I could have like hoped for and more. It is amazing, and it's living on repeat, rent free in my mind. That scene, it's the whole movie pretty much. When it's the 3 of them, it's just so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, like I said, like, oh my god, I feel like so obnoxious, but you know, I didn't grow up on the Spider-Man movies. I feel obnoxious bringing that up, but it was still so exhilarating to see the 3 of them. And that one scene that just keeps on playing in my head is when they're all swinging, they land on some part of the top, and then they're in that Spider-Man pose. I was like, is this real life? Because it does not feel real. It just feels like there's no way that Marvel put in all of this effort to make it this good.
Right.
Like, and the fact that it's real, like, I was going back and I was like, I want to know the theater's reaction. So I was actually watching theater's reactions to the final battle, because my theater probably had the best reaction during that final battle. And the way that like Andrew Garfield says, I love you guys. And
I love that.
And they had that hug. I was like,
everything was just so beautiful. The one that's where you're talking about where all of them are in the Spider-Man pose, I'm like, the second I can get an HD copy of that's gonna be my like wallpaper. It is gonna be so, because it fills me with such happiness. And yeah, they really are. I like that they're like brothers. I think that's also a good way to look at the variants. Cough, Sylvie and Loki, your siblings, not people who should be romantically involved. Sorry, unrelated. But yeah, I really just, it was beautiful the way they interacted, the way they fought. The fight scene, I really loved this movie's fight scenes. Not even just the one at the end, but like I was saying earlier, the one with Green Goblin and Tom's Peter just straight up. That was also so incredible. I mean, the one at the end of them fighting, it was like, damn. Yeah. Especially when like, I mean, I get this isn't really part of the fight, but like when Tom goes and he picks up the glider and he's about to stab him, I'm like, oh my goodness, this man's like full on lost it. And then Toby comes in and it's just like, oh my goodness. And then Toby gets stabbed, and that was too much. The whole theater, I didn't cry, luckily, but
I was
the
in
woman
shock,
was
yeah.
the woman was too stunned to speak. Like I gasped. I was like, no way you're doing this. But he was like, it's chill. I've been stabbed before. Um, yeah, they really got, I think, the fighting down well. They got the Spider-Man moves and like they let them play off each other really well and gave them a great relationship.
I think in terms of like high scale action fight scenes, No Way Home didn't have that many, but in a way, that's a really good thing because for me, I noticed that a lot of the way that the action just was like the technique and the choreography, it was very much like honed in on the way the characters and their personalities are. Like, I don't know how to describe it because sometimes you'll see fight scenes and it'll just feel really random. And then this time, the fight scenes that were shown were done really well because you could feel the characters like personality radiating out of each of the fight
Yeah.
scenes, if that makes sense.
No, I feel you.
With the three Spider-Man together, even with some of the villains, with Doc Ock, especially Green Goblin, I feel like you could just really feel him radiating off. I don't know, it's like weird to describe, but I feel like the fight scenes were very much in tune with the characters and them as a person. So I think even though it may not have been like, oh, as cool as the illusions, from Far From Home with Mysterio, it didn't need to have that because again, the characters that were the heart of this movie were the heart of the action and it really translated and I was just really satisfied with that. So
yeah, like kind of like what you were saying, like I thought the fight scene in this movie in the mirror dimension was cool, but I'd much rather watch like the ones later on when it's just them straight up like fighting, not with all the cool looking visuals. I'm here for just like a real fight pretty much, like and getting to actually see like the characters.
And the fact that the Spider-Man struggle, like I think that was one of my favorite fights. Like that, I think that was my favorite part because even though you would expect, oh, there are three Spider-Man, like they're the same person. No, they're not. I think that introduced the concept of variance really well. They might be the same identity, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're internally like the same person. Like they have similar things in between them and definitely similar personalities, but they each go through their still own experiences and that reflects. And I love that they had that little not banter, but like that little bro moment in the fight scene when all three of them were they were like some part of the construction and they were like, oh, you're Peter 2, I'm Peter 3. Wow, here's the fight. So I just really love that, and I think it drove home for me. We kind of touched on visuals and cinematography. Like, obviously, it was a beautiful movie. It's not the most beautiful movie in the MCU, but
I wouldn't even say the most beautiful this year.
No.
But there was one scene I thought was really, it was very pretty to look at, and it was such like a simple scene. It was right after May died, and Tom's Peter is standing watching Jay Jonah like on the big projector. And it's just like the lighting on the feast bag, the rain, the tears, everything. I'm like, oh, this is gorgeous. Like, oh, how horrible you're going through that, dude, but this is pretty to look at.
Yeah, no, I think that was like beautifully shot. This is definitely not like visuals are definitely not a strength of this film, but again, they didn't need to be. So I don't really have much to say there. I just think it was a well shot film. Like it was decent Marvel standard, not much to say there. It was definitely not like obviously Eternals level, but it didn't need to be Eternals level at all. So I'm not or like it was just good.
It had its characters that no one cared what they were looking at other than the characters.
No, they really didn't have to. And again, it's because the characters were done so well. Not every single element needs to be a hit. But as long as you have one element that's a hit, that's all that matters. And that's what there was in Spider-Man No Way Home. You had one element that was just a complete hit. So the rest of it didn't matter. Exactly. Let's jump into the post-credit scenes. So the first one, I feel like the one with Venom was I really thought that Tom Hardy's Venom would stay. I didn't know that they would just drop the symbiote and leave. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit disappointed because I love Eddie Brock. Okay, I like love Eddie Brock and Venom's dynamic together so much. Yes. I just love like Tom Hardy's performance. So I really wanted to see Tom Hardy and Tom Holland like interact. But the fact that they took him out of the MCU and left the symbiote, like I know that sets up like Tom Holland Spider-Man to get the symbiote, but I wanted to see Eddie and Tom interact so much in the MCU. So I was kind of disappointed with that.
I felt so like like led on. So like catfish pretty much. Like
Yeah.
because like the end, I remember seeing Let There Be Carnage, and at the end when it's like he's in Tom Holland's universe, I'm like, oh my god, he's in the MCU. We're gonna get to see him and Tom Holland interact. And oh my god, is he gonna be in No Way Home? This is gonna be awesome. And then it's literally like he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go find this Spider-Man, and then he just gets sent back. And I'm like, now do y'all just see this? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Very rude. I did like that the one actor who's the bartender, he's on Ted Lasso, which is one of my favorite shows. So I was like, oh my God, it's Danny from Ted Lasso. But
so cool.
But yeah, it was like
no, I just feel like also I was like kind of catfish, but
yeah,
it'd be cool to see Tom Holland with a Venom symbiote and
it'll
how
be
he manages
interesting.
that. So I'm just excited to see like where they kind of decide to go off that in the future. But let's talk about the big one though, which was technically we got our first look at Multiverse of
a whole
Madness.
trailer pretty much. Like
yeah, we got like our pretty much a whole trailer. So why don't you give your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness, so many. I was just okay. Well, first off, I have to say, evil Doctor Strange. Just that, I'm like, oh my goodness. And now I'm like laughing at the people who are like, what if it's pointless? Like the TV show. I'm like, I get that some of it was kind of like, a cheesy show, but like now it's like, oh, so it actually does play a huge role in the MCU. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Just it looks really pretty, like of a movie. Like when they were showing like, I don't know what it was supposed to be, like the multiverse. Like I was like, oh
it's
my
beautiful.
Goodness. I wish we got to see the other characters that weren't like Doctor Strange. Like we saw Wanda a little bit, but I would love to see everyone else. It's America's in this one, and I want to see her. And we saw like her jacket and like her, but we didn't see her talk or anything. I don't even know. I'm excited for this movie, and I don't know what to expect now. I thought it was gonna be like evil Wanda, which it obviously still could be, but it was like him recruiting her, and I'm like, where does this take place in the timeline?
Right.
She brought up Westview. I'm like, so is this right after Westview? And she has blonde hair now. I'm like, girl, you got to stop changing. Well, it's not like fully blonde, but it's like not red, is not brunette. I'm like, stop changing your hair. It's too much. But I'm just like, what is going on? I don't even know. I can't wait for that movie. I'm really curious to see what they do. I hope we get like another trailer that will kind of tell us more plot, because right now it's just like multiverse is broken, guys. Like lots going on.
Yeah. It was kind of confusing, like where the movie was taking place. Is this a consequence of what happened in No Way Home? Like I think it might be after No Way Home, but so is this like a consequence of what happened in No Way Home? Why did Strange specifically go to Wanda thinking she might know about the multiverse? Like I think there's just a lot of questions to be asked. I also realized that we completely forgot to talk about this one character who showed up in Multiverse of Madness, Wong. Wong is a freaking Sorcerer Supreme.
Good for him. He deserves it.
And I had a take on Twitter the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but I was like, I wish Wong was the lead of, and I know it's not like that in the comics, but I just wish Wong always had a bigger lead in the MCU, because like they just really name dropped and said, oh yeah, by the way, he's a Sorcerer Supreme right now. And I was like, why don't we see that?
Yeah,
every single appearance he's had so far has always been like for kind of comedy purposes, and like he's the fucking Sorcerer Supreme, and you won't show what that's like. Like,
yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I doubt it will happen, but like since in the Shang-Chi post-credit scene, it like he was there and he was like, yo, like talking with like Captain Marvel and Hulk and Shang-Chi and Katie. I'm like, hopefully maybe we'll get to see more of that like group together and make him more of a like leading character, or maybe we will see more of him in Multiverse of Madness, and they just didn't like put that in the trailer. But yeah, I do enjoy his, like he is used for comedy relief, but I do enjoy him, and I want to see more of him as the Sorcerer Supreme, because like I don't know, that was kind of shocking. I was like, poor Doctor Strange, like you really got blipped, but like also good for Wong. So
right yeah. No, I just think like I loved Wanda's when she was meditating.
Yes, I was like, the new costume, stunning.
I was in love with that. And Wanda, okay, the thing about Multiverse of Madness is I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that hyped for the movie. One, because Waldron's writing it, so I'm a little scared. But then Sam Raimi's directing it, so I don't know. That'll be really interesting. But Waldron scares me because of how he did Loki just a little bit. So I was a little, that's already like kind of scary for me about Multiverse of Madness, and I'm just not I'm like hyped for the sense like, oh, we get to see the multiverse,
Yeah.
but I'm not too hyped for it because I'm someone who's like hyped for projects based on the characters that are appearing in it or
Hmm.
how well the project looks. And Doctor Strange and Wanda I don't think make my top 20 MCU
Ooh, that's a
characters.
hot take.
That is a hot take, I know, but I don't think they make it. So, um, that's why like character wise I'm not the most excited to see it,
Yeah.
but you know the trailer like it looks cool, and I think just the idea of the multiverse opening up
Yeah.
is what has me excited. So there were a lot of like neat looks at the trailer, but I'm just scared of Waldron. I'm just like I
No,
don't
totally
know, because the thing
understandable.
is like I said, Doctor Strange and Wanda are not my top characters, but I like them in the MC. I especially really like the arc that Wanda has had in the MCU so far,
Mhm.
and like WandaVision really cemented her really well, and I loved like the way she was shown in that. I'm just like, what did they use? Like, you know how they do with like Sylvie? They made Sylvie stronger to like make Loki look weaker. I'm like, what if they
Yeah.
do that with Wanda and Strange? It's like they make Wanda like supremely strong, which she is, but they
Yeah.
kind of use that to, I don't know, sideline Strange a little bit, which
I hope not, because it's his movie. It's not
right. Like I
Wanda's.
hope they don't do that because that's detrimental to both Wanda and Strange. So that's why that's the only reason I'm a little concerned for the movie. But I think Wanda and Strange is also like just a really interesting dynamic and
It's an
one I thought
interesting
we would
duo to
never
pick.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
one I thought we would never see, but honestly, like they could turn out to be one of like the best duos. And the
Very
inclusion of
powerful
America
duo.
Chavez is just like really interesting because I want to see
Yeah.
like what her role is in the movie and what
I
she
feel like she
does.
won't have a big role. Like I know she's going to be in it, obviously, but I feel like we're not going to see as much of her as I actually think we're going to see.
Mhm.
But hopefully, I don't
Like
know. Like they're
how does she get introduced in the movie? That's what I'm curious about. Yeah.
yeah. Like why is she hanging out with Doctor Strange? Like your parents are letting you hang out with an adult man like this? Excuse me. I would run the other way.
Yeah, so I'm just excited. Like I'm curious to see what they do with the characters, but I'm also just a little scared because of who's writing these characters. But then you also have Sam Raimi behind the camera, so I
Yes.
don't know like how it'll play out and
I'm very curious
yeah.
about that too because I heard before that it was going to be like a horror film, but then I heard that test audiences didn't like that and that they're like gonna make it less horror like. I don't know how true that is, but I hope like I want a scary movie. I want to be scared of evil Doctor Strange because truthfully, that is who I'm most excited to see in this movie now. Like after that trailer, I'm like,
Mhm.
I want to see like how this dude is out here messing shit up.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I also hope Doctor Strange is able to tie a lot of the loose threads together, especially when it comes to the multiverse and the timeline for that. Like, I hope it sort of connects and makes things a little clear, like, oh, you know, maybe the multiverse was open right when, like, maybe we'll find out if Loki lines up with WandaVision, and so the multiverse has been open for that long. I think it'll
yeah.
clarify a lot of the other events that took place. And I also, as an Eternal stan, I will say I do believe that we might be seeing an Eternal cameo in this movie
Ooh.
from Thena Makari or Druig. And the only reason why I say this is because this is a universal movie, and the
Yeah.
Eternals and the Celestials are very much connected to the creation of the universe and the life on universe. So I don't know if we might get a cameo from them. I know they did reshoots, right? And
Yeah.
a certain actor called Barry Keoghan posted a picture of the Druid chair, and I don't know if he posted that maybe because he's filming a cameo for Multiverse of Madness, which would
Ooh.
make sense because his character is somewhere floating out in space. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm thinking. I'm just trying to like put
Post
the
credit
pieces
scene,
together.
maybe like
That post credit scene, maybe like a cameo in the movie. We don't know, but that's sort of what I was thinking too. Yeah, I don't have anything much to say, but I think the last thing that we wanted to talk about is the future of Spider-Man. I don't really have like much thoughts on that because I'm not the best worst on the Spider-Verse, but I know like they were showing like these future villains and like the multiverse. Like I know people were sort of
yeah.
theorizing that when the multiverse opened up. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm like, are those villains gonna be in it now or not? And like since Tom's Peter like knows about like Oscorp, like and Gwen Stacy, like is he gonna like have his own Gwen Stacy and like Harry
Yeah.
Osborn slash Norman Osborn? Like, is that gonna be a thing?
Yeah.
And like the movie, like it didn't even say at the end Spider-Man will return. It said Doctor Strange will return. Like I know obviously we're seeing more Spider-Man, but they kind of didn't fully set it up. Like they're just like he's fighting on his own, like just like made it like a very self-reliant man now. Like he listens to like the police tracker, he makes his own suits, he's getting his GED, like he's doing stuff that I don't know where they're gonna go with this because I honestly thought this movie was going to end with him at MIT. So I was like, oh, okay, we're going a different route. Like I'm curious. I don't have many. Yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go with this.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they're setting up his college trilogy, but like, what does that mean? Because I don't even know if he's technically in college right now, right?
Yeah, he's like trying to. So he dropped out of high school, and he's getting his GED. Like he has like a book for it. Is
Yeah,
when he was moving. So I'm like, is he gonna apply to college? Is he
right.
gonna? Because like I know MIT was like the dream, but like, is that gonna hurt too much? Like, I mean, obviously it's a big school, but it's still something he like dreamed about doing with Ned and MJ. Like, will that hurt you too much?
Yeah,
And
like,
like,
will they ever link up again? I think.
I hope so. I would love to. Like, I love the actors' chemistry and like the
Right,
characters.
right, right.
So,
So,
but
yeah.
maybe they'll introduce like a new group for him to like vibe with, which would kind of suck. I hope this isn't the last we see of Ned and MJ.
I feel like the new group that they would find him to vibe with would be a Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy group.
Yeah,
I think that's the
definitely.
new group that we would see. But yeah, so let's talk about rankings in the MCU.
Ooh.
Where is Spider-Man No Way Home in your current, like, it doesn't have to be a conclusive answer. You can just be like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like top five, probably. And then I'm curious to also know, where does this movie rank in your Spider-Verse rankings?
When we say Spider Verse, is that only live action or includes Into the Spider Verse?
I think we can include Into the Spider-Verse
Okay.
because technically Miles Morales was referenced in this. So
Yeah.
who knows what'll happen?
Yeah. So for overall in the MCU, I've had the same favorite Marvel movie for 7 years up until Wednesday. That
Oh.
it was dethroned. And it might change over time. Like I am rewatching the entire MCU right now, but as of right now, I can confidently say this is like my favorite Marvel movie, and it is just like I know I've said this like 20 times already. It's seeing my whole childhood come together, like all the nostalgia, all of like these characters that I am so attached to and love. And I'm like, damn, I don't know how upcoming Marvel movies are going to compare to this for me. Like, how am I going to go watch Multiverse of Madness and not be like, well, it's no Spider-Man No Way Home. So for me, I'd say it's number one for the MCU. And should I do my Spider-Verse ranking now, or do you want to do your MCU ranking? Or...
No, you can
okay.
Do yours.
And then for Spider-Verse, I'm this one, it's not like set in stone. It is like, I'd say it's tied with Into the Spider-Verse because they're like handling kind of the same concept of multiple Spider-Men, but one is a happy movie and the other one destroyed me. And because I love Into the Spider-Verse, that's like one of my in general favorite movies. And I'm like, I don't know if this is like better than that. I gave them like the same stars on Letterboxd, and it's just they have such different outcomes that it's like they're just tied in 1st for me. That I would say those are like my two favorites, and I can't pick between the two of them for which I would give the throne.
Yeah, no, I think those are fair rankings. A lot of people put No Way Home like number one. Most people top five. Like more people probably top 10. Whoever put Spider-Man No Way Home after top 10, I don't know if I can trust you. I feel like top 10 is like the minimum.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're not the biggest Spider-Man fan, so you just did not have it in your like top 5, which is completely fine. But like I feel like it's definitely a top 10 movie for me. I mean, for me right now, it's sitting at like number 5, but
nice.
I feel like it might move around. And when I say move around, I think I need to rewatch the MCU because I have some very interesting opinions about the MCU. Eternals is my number 1, and a lot of people would look at that and be like, are you out of your mind? No, I literally was showing my Spider-Man ranking yesterday. I made a TikTok and someone was like, oh, that's so funny because Eternals was all the way at the bottom for me, number 25. And I was like, great. I don't know how to react to that.
Good
they were very respectful about it. At least they were like, oh my god, why do you have Eternals at number 1? Like,
yeah.
They were very respectful about it.
Nowhere near the worst Marvel movie. People are insane when they say that.
I know, but so for me, but it's like I feel like it's a top 5. I feel like that's a very fair place to start it with. I will say it's better than Shang-Chi, and Shang-Chi's number 6 for me. That's why I put No Way Home at number 5. But I think we're gonna have to rewatch the MCU and see if I liked like where I would put it. But I would say it would never drop lower than top 10 for me. Like it would that would just never happen. It's definitely in the upper tier of the MCU. So I'll say it's that. And then Spider-Verse, I can't decide if it's better than Spider-Man 2 as of right now because I was confused by the plot details of No Way Home. It's currently in number 3, so I'm right now my Spider-Man ranking Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse, and then No Way Home.
Very valid. I like that.
If I I think I also wanted to rewatch the Spider-Man movies. If I rewatch it and I realize that I like No Way Home more than Into the Spider or more than Spider-Man 2, I feel like it'll jump to number 2. Into the Spider-Verse will become number 1, and then yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where we are right now with that. So those are my rankings. But that is the end of this episode. Thank you for joining me and talking, spending your last 2 hours talking about No Way Home. Thank you for taking out your time, and I
Of
hope you had a
course.
fun time here.
I definitely did. It's been fun getting to talk about this movie.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Make sure you guys check out Zoe everywhere online. I will leave all her links below. And thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Eternally Obsessed. Make sure to check out the podcast on all of the different platforms, Google, Spotify. Leave a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts, and follow the podcast Instagram and TikTok to keep in tune with the updates. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for all the appreciation on the podcast, and I will see you. And I hope you guys have a good day and have fun watching No Way Home.
Yes.